the Giants lost the next 6 games in a row. Will the same movie be played out, or will this be a different ending?
If this is going to be a different ending for the Giants, they've really got to put some pressure on Sam Bradford. And that's been a major, major problem for the Giants this year. They just have not been able to get that push against opposing offensive linemen. And Bradford's been, overall, has been
Okay,
at best, which is saying a lot considering the Eagles are an under 500 club.
he did have a good performance last week, despite the 2 interceptions he gave up in the red zone. He cannot have that kind of performance again, because if he does that again, he won't be so lucky this time against the Giants, I believe. But I'm actually going to go with the Eagles this week. I know a lot of Giant fans are probably not going to be thrilled with my assessment, but look at the situation right here. 2 of their receivers may not even play this week, Ruben Randall and Odell Beckham. Victor Cruz may not even be able to play yet again for another week.
Yeah, which is really a real disappointment for the G-men because they miss Cruz in the worst way. And you put him in there with Odell Beckham Jr., and it's pick your poison for opposing secondaries.
If they're healthy, that is.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, you don't know whether they're going to play or not. And even if they do, are they going to be 100% to play? Because you can't rely on Dwayne Harris to do everything. The guy's a return specialist and a slot guy at best, not your starting number 1 receiver. This is exactly why I'm going with the rushing offense of the Eagles this week to win. All right, let's go to the next game. It's the reunion of Deflategate. The Patriots visiting the Colts Sunday night. Back in January, the Patriots won 45-7 over the Colts in the AFC title game. Patriots went on to win 28-24 against the Seahawks in Super Bowl 49. And of course, then Deflategate came out. Brady was suspended for 4 games. Then he appealed it. Then it was overturned by a federal judge in September. This was supposed to be the return of Brady, but ever since he was allowed to play, they've been undefeated this year.
Yep.
It's almost reminiscent of 2007, the way they've been playing.
Mm-hmm. And this time, Andrew Luck supposedly is going to return from his injury for the game, but I don't think it really matters because, to be quite honest with you, the Patriots are just dynamic on each side of the ball, and Tom Brady looks 10 years younger throwing the football out there. All Patriots all the time in this one.
And you got to love Dion Lewis. Mm-hmm. What a find he's been this year for this Patriots team. He's sort of the Shane Vereen of this year's offense.
There you go.
Yeah, I got to go with the Patriots in this one. And LeGarrette Brown to have a big day like he did the last time.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the rematch. Super Bowl 43. We got the Cardinals visiting the Steelers. The last time these 2 teams played, Steelers beat the Cardinals 27-23, including that game-winning touchdown from 6 yards out from Big Ben to Santonio Holmes. Santonio became the MVP of that year's Super Bowl. He had 8 receptions, 131 yards. He became the 6th receiver at that time to win the MVP award. Mm-hmm. This time, a lot of the same players are not there, except Larry Fitzgerald, who this year is having sort of a renaissance season. And you also have on the other side
Big Ben.
Well, Big Ben and also James Harrison, who had that 100-yard pick 6 in that Super Bowl off of Kurt Warner.
Yep. Is Big Ben still out for this game? Because if not, then the Steelers might have a chance. But
he's out.
Yeah, if Michael Vick has to be the one to take the snaps from under center, I wouldn't completely rule them out because he still is a dangerous guy, especially when he's making plays with his feet. But at the same time, Carson Palmer has just really found himself as the Cardinals' starting quarterback. And you consider the fact that Chris Johnson has suddenly found the fountain of youth, even though he's not really that old. The Cardinals have been so much better offensively with Chris Johnson now taking the majority of the carries. I actually like Arizona in this one.
I like Arizona too. And I think we're going to see, Chris Pearson against Antonio Brown. Yeah, that Patrick Pearson and Antonio Brown. That's going to be a really dynamic matchup to look at. But, yeah, I'm going with the Cardinals all the way. Now, from one Super Bowl rematch to another, we got the Ravens facing the 49ers, the rematch of Super Bowl 47 in San Francisco. And with all the depletions on the receiving corps, last week is why the Ravens lost, including giving up a big 21-9 lead over against Cleveland in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. This time, though, Crockett Gilmore will be back. Also, Steve Smith Sr. will be back. But in my mind, it really doesn't matter because I think Carlos Hyde is going to have a field day against this team.
That's the only way for the Niners to try and really make something of this game. Give the ball to Carlos Hyde, and also, can someone please tell Colin Kaepernick to try and limit his mistakes, please?
And exploit an injury-depleted secondary that is the Ravens, especially Will Davis out for the year with a torn ACL. Darius Webb with an injury. Elvis Dumerville may not even play this week. Kaepernick, I think, will take advantage. He's going to run the ball plenty of times. I see the 49ers going roughshod all over them. Okay, now the next game. Quickly, the Dolphins taking on the Titans. The beginning of the Dan Campbell era.
Yep. The Dolphins are going to hope that this doesn't turn into the Dan Campbell era, and this becomes the beginning of the Dan Campbell era. Interesting that he used the Oklahoma-style practice methods on the first day of the job to try and toughen up those Dolphin defenders and see who is the best of the best there. Here, the Dolphins are going up against Marcus Mariota, who is still trying to make a name for himself in his rookie season. This is just such a tough game to call. If the Titans win, Mariota is really going to have to look after that Dolphin defense, because in spite of the fact that they've not done much, they're still due for a breakout. The Dolphin defense is.
They better get a breakout. They're 29th in total defense. They give up nearly 400 yards a game. They're dead last against the run, giving up 165 yards. So if the Titans win, it'll be because of their rushing game with the likes of Bishop Sankey. Also, Anderson, they have some other running backs on the team that can maybe take the charge for the Titans to win. It won't be the passing game that wins them. It will be their rushing game. But honestly, I think it's the Dolphins. The fact remains, they've had some terrible losses. Dan Campbell is bringing a whole new tough era for Tannehill and the squad to really come through. And I think this is the week they will come through for Dan Campbell.
And if the Dolphins win this one, it's going to be because the defense finally has a breakout game. It's not going to be because of Ryan Tannehill, that's for sure. He's been a major disappointment this year.
1 sack, though, for that defense. But yeah, that offense, they're 28th in the league, too, by the way.
This is where the Dolphins really have to expose the rookie Mariota for who he is, which is a rookie.
Yet he's 10th in pass rating. Isn't that crazy? But yeah.
Go figure.
Let's go with the Dolphins to win. All right, how about the undefeated Bengals visiting the Buffalo Bills? The question will be for Buffalo, is Tyrod Taylor playing or is it E.J. Manuel? So that's the guessing game that the Cincinnati defense will have to play. And on top of that, will Andy Dalton have yet another comeback performance, or will they finally just have a lead, maintain it?
Let's put it this way. There's not going to be any comebacks. I like Cincinnati in this one.
I do, too, especially A.J. Green, Tyler Eifert, especially Eifert, who's probably having a breakout season for that squad. And it's not even just them. How about the duo of Gio Bernard and Jeremy Hill? Probably one of the best running back tandems in the NFL this year. I like the Bengals in this one. Okay, the Seattle Seahawks being visited by the Carolina Panthers. And honestly, Seattle's going to take this one because even though Carolina is undefeated, look at the schedule they've had.
Seattle's been up and down this season. They've lost a couple of games that they should have won.
On the road, that is.
On the road.
And yet they've been undefeated at home. That's crazy. They can't win on the road, but yet they can win at home, which has been really the thing about Seattle. And that's a tough place to play in, the 12th man.
I think this is the game where the Seahawks right themselves. I like Seattle as well.
The last time they played each other, remember the divisional round? Including that pick six by Cam Chancellor for 90 yards.
That's
they won
right.
31-17, and they've had a lot of close encounters with each other by 7 points or less. Yeah, that's not going to be the same. I like the Seahawks, and I think Jimmy Graham's going to have 2 touchdowns in this performance. Okay, now the Chargers going to Lambeau Field to take on the Packers, who have won 11 straight at home, looking for number 12.
A really interesting matchup. Phillip Rivers and Aaron Rodgers, the two of the best quarterbacks in the game, in the modern era of the game right now. The one determining factor in this game is going to be which quarterback is going to make the big play right here. Aaron Rodgers has built his career on making big plays. That's why I like Green Bay in this one.
Well, if Green Bay does win, they won last week because their defense was great as well. They did get 6 sacks on the day over Nick Foles. They were able to pick him off 4 times, but they got to be able to stop the run. So let's see how they do against Melvin Gordon, because last week Todd Gurley got 159 yards on 30 carries last week over that Packers defense. If Melvin Gordon can exploit that, maybe the Chargers win. But honestly, you're talking about the Packers at home with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I'm not going against Aaron Rodgers in this one. Give me the Packers to win all time, every time. Now let's go to a classic matchup in the NFC North. The Chicago Bears facing the Detroit Lions in the Motor City.
That's an afterthought for the fans in Chicago right now, because the Cubs have taken over the spotlight over there. But just for argument's sake, Matthew Stafford's better than Jay Cutler. In spite of the fact that Cutler was able to win a game last week, I still say Cutler is complete and utter garbage. As far as who wins the game, Detroit is extremely weak defensively. Chicago has actually played a little bit better defensively lately, and I think it's going to be the Bears' defense that wins this one for them. I like Chicago.
In the losses he's had this year, he's threw 5 touchdowns and 6 picks. In those losses right there against, in those 3 straight losses against the Lions. I honestly think this will be the week that Cutler and the Bears end that losing streak against Detroit. I'm going with the Bears to win this one. Matt Forte is really the center. He's going to be the centerpiece. If the Lions want to win, the turnovers have got to stop from Stafford.
So true.
The running game's got to get picked up, and the defense cannot give up 42 points like they did last week.
That's right.
Okay, how about the Chiefs trying to end their 4-game losing streak, going up against the Minnesota Vikings, coming off their bye, TCF Bank in Minnesota. This was supposed to be a game featuring 2 incredible running backs in Jamal Charles and, of course, Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson, second in the league with 93 yards he averages per game. But now that Jamal Charles is done for the year and you got to rely on Niall Davis and West and possibly DeAnthony Thomas, that's a bit of a scary thought because, of course, Charles, again, had half the touchdowns on offense for the Chiefs with 5, and he was 33% of the offense, as I mentioned earlier. I just do not see the Chiefs even winning this game. I actually am going with Teddy Bridgewater to win this one.
Yeah, I like Minnesota in this one, too. Just too much of a disparity at running back now that Charles is gone.
And look out for Anthony Barr, the linebacker. He's going to have 2 sacks over Smith. By the way, Smith's been sacked 21 times, second most in the league this year. Okay, let's go to another match right here. We got the Denver Broncos taking on the Cleveland Browns. This is the week where the Denver Broncos offense has to come out firing.
And I think they will come out firing. All Denver all the time in this one.
It could be all Denver all the time, but you know what? I wouldn't count out Cleveland. I really wouldn't underestimate McCown this week, considering he's had more touchdowns versus interceptions in the last few games than Peyton Manning. But you never, ever go against Peyton Manning, especially in this contest. Yeah, I like Peyton Manning and company. I think he'll break out of the funk he's been in. I think the offense will be clicking on all cylinders. And C.J. Anderson, I think he's going to have a nice 80-yard performance on the day. Expect even Demaryius Thomas to have a touchdown. And the last game of the week between the AFC South foes, the Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars visiting each other, being visited by Houston, and this matchup really honestly sucks.
Should we even bother to try and analyze this matchup? I mean, think about it. Blake Bortles is better at quarterback. Houston is basically relying on their defense.
They don't even know who their quarterback is, whether it's going to be Brian Hoyer one week or Ryan Mallett the other week. That's one of the most unstable positions in the NFL.
I would actually see. I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville won this game. I'm picking the Jaguars in this one.
I know Houston lost 27-20 on Thursday Night Football last week. Both quarterbacks actually played. Both were intercepted in the beginning and end of the match. And Mallett, unfortunately, was injured that's when Hoyer had to come in. It's just, it doesn't matter who it is. You know what? I was going to go with the Houston Texans, but yeah, I'm going to go crazy this week. Give me the Jaguars in their stadium that actually has a pool inside it. But
there you go.
That's not really the reason with the pool. The reason this week, I honestly think TJ Yeldon, look out for him to have a breakout performance against that so-so defense of Houston. And also, look out for Allen Hurns. Another big week is ahead for him, too. 2 touchdowns. And that is all your games for Week 6 of the NFL season. Now, let's go into some Week 7 college football, starting with the West Virginia Mountaineers taking on the Baylor Bears.
What can you say about Baylor that has not already been said this season? They are explosive on offense.
Number 1 in scoring, number 1 in total offense in the country.
Number 1 in scoring, number 1 in total offense. West Virginia is going to have quite a bit of trouble going up against that Baylor offense here.
In Waco, nonetheless.
In Waco, nonetheless. All Baylor all the time in this one.
Then you got the Oklahoma Sooners coming off an embarrassing 24-17 loss to Texas in the Red River Showdown last week, going up against the Kansas State Wildcats, who had a 35-18 lead at the half against TCU and ended up losing. That it's just unbelievable how Oklahoma gave up their game and it was terrible in their performance against Texas.
Yeah.
And Kansas State had a chance to beat TCU and didn't take it.
Oh, wow. You want to talk about a blown opportunity? Kansas State had such a large lead on TCU at halftime, then all of a sudden just completely self-destructs in the second half.
Yep.
Good teams are judged on what they do in adversity. Let's see what Kansas State can do at home against an Oklahoma squad that's coming off an embarrassing loss.
Who's your pick this week?
My pick is Oklahoma.
I'm going with Kansas State, actually. Despite the fact that there's been several issues with their quarterback situation, I actually think they will finish this game off and finish the air raid this week because Oklahoma is too reliant on that. I think they need to bring in some of that Samaje Perine run-style offense for this week if they want to win. Now the battle of the Big Ten. We got the number 17 Iowa Hawkeyes against the number 20 Northwestern Wildcats. Iowa, undefeated, best start since 2009.
How about the job that Kirk Ferentz has done with that squad this season? They've come up with some of the biggest wins of the year. Already have a big win at Wisconsin. Now going up against a Northwestern squad that just came off a really bad loss.
Blanked, in fact, by Michigan.
Blanked by Michigan. And we're going to be getting to that in just a moment. But in this case, who's going to make the big play in this one? Is it going to be an Iowa squad that's looking to fulfill a dream season, or is it going to be a Northwestern squad that's still trying to make a name for themselves?
I think it's going to be the Iowa defense that's really that gives up maybe 16.2 points, and it's going to be that kid Jordan Canzeri on the ground who had 43 carries last week. Yeah, I'm going with the Hawkeyes all the way to win this week.
Yeah.
Now the next game, this is going to be the first game in the post-Steve Sarkisian era for the USC Trojans, but yet of all teams they have to face after Sarkisian, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yeah, USC is badly in need of a signature win this year, especially after the Sarkisian fiasco. And this is a long rivalry that goes back many, many years. I'm so tempted to say USC can pull off an upset here, but I just don't see it. Notre Dame is really dangerous offensively. I like the Irish.
Me too. I just cannot see, especially because it just happened this week. That's a huge adjustment to go from your coach just got fired on Monday. You got a new interim head coach. You got to come up with a whole new game plan. There's no way that Cody Kessler and company are going to get all that together in time. I see Notre Dame taking this. And last night, the UCLA Bruins lost to the Stanford Cardinal 56-35, including Christian McCaffrey, who had a breakout performance. Broke Toby Gerhardt's all-time school record, had 243 yards, and even Francis Owusu had a huge catch in the end zone last night off the back of a defender. It was
and now Stanford remains undefeated this year
in the Pac-12.
In the Pac-12, that is. They're leading the North Division with a 4-0 record. At this rate, if Stanford can run the table the second half of the season, don't be surprised if you see them, quote-unquote, host the Pac-12 championship game, which is going to be at Levi Stadium this year, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's in their neck of the woods right there for Stanford. Despite the fact they lost the first week against Northwestern. What a hell of a way to at least come back from that fiasco.
It's a good recovery for them.
Now, the next game here, we got the Arizona State Sun Devils taking on the Utah Utes. The Utes right now are in position to be in the top 4 in time when the college football playoff rankings come out.
Yep. And when you think Utah, you think offensive explosiveness. And they've really, really taken advantage of the tough schedule that they've had. They've come away with wins against Michigan. Now they're going up against an Arizona State squad that's going to try and overtake them in the South Division of the Pac-12. Game being held in the Salt Lake. Hard for me to go against an explosive offense like Utah has this year. I like, as the late Fred Gwynn used to say, the Utes.
Oh, I like the Utes too, especially with Devonta Booker. But look out for the matchup between DJ Foster, the running back, wide receiver for Arizona State, going up against defensive back Marcus Williams. That's going to be really something to look out for. And then, of course, traditional Big Ten matchup. You got the Penn State Nittany Lions going to Columbus to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes in an 8 o'clock Saturday night matchup on ABC. Christian Hackenberg, a guy who I think a lot of people are going to be looking on their draft boards come 2016 for the NFL. And then you have whoever is quarterbacking for Ohio State, whether it's Cardale Jones, J.T. Barrett. Yeah.
Picture this. You've got those two squads, who, by the way, are tied for the Eastern Division lead in the Big Ten. Something tells me Penn State's going to be giving Ohio State a lot of trouble in this one. I like the Buckeyes here. But still,
extreme caution.
With extreme caution. Penn State's a lot better team than people give them credit for.
Well, even though you picked Ohio State, I'm going Nittany Lion. I smell an upset coming. There have been several times during the season when Ohio State could have just as easily lost during the season.
And they've had a real disparity at quarterback. They can't decide between J.T. Barrett or Cardale Jones. They've basically been rotating the guys back and forth. At least they have a good converted receiver in Braxton Miller to work with, and he's been having a pretty solid season as a converted receiver.
But in the end, I'm thinking Nittany Lions are going to win the horseshoe, but you never know. Somehow Ohio State seems to pull off some type of miracle victory. Now, the next two matchups are big SEC matchups. Let's start with the Alabama Crimson Tide going to College Station to take on the Texas A&M Aggies. Aggies, of course, they're one of the 3 remaining undefeated teams in the SEC.
Yep.
They're at home. Tonight they're going to have the midnight call to get the troops rallied up for the big game against the Crimson. Since 2012, when A&M entered the conference, this has been one of the most explosive, one of the most exciting rivalries.
And Texas A&M is going to want some, or still thinking about last year when Alabama really wiped the turf with them. 59-0 was the final score last year.
Or about 2012, the first year when Johnny Manziel and company got the big upset victory in Tuscaloosa.
Yep, with the 12th man, and with that Texas A&M offense being so explosive. It's hard for me to pick in this one because Alabama's got so much athletic ability on each side of the ball, but I worry about their quarterback situation, though. They've had a little bit of a problem spot in that area, whereas Texas A&M has a little bit more stability on each side of the ball.
Well, they got Kyle Allen. He's got 13 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing scores on the year. Christian Kirk, who's really been an explosive freshman, 191.6 all-purpose yards. I'm going with the Aggies. I think this is a year where the Aggies are going to be going toe-to-toe with LSU for that SEC West. I think this is the time where the midnight call is really going to be in style and going to be working.
I'm tempted to say the Aggies, but something tells me Alabama might be able to make another play or two in this game. I like the Crimson Tide.
Oof. All right, we'll see what happens in that one. By the way,
speaking of SEC, how about that other matchup? Florida and LSU, a matchup of division leaders.
Both undefeated, by the way, too.
Yep. And how about the job that Florida's new head coach has done for them? He's done such a great job with basically the same cast of characters from last year.
But here's the problem. We found out this past week Will Grier tested positive for PEDs. He's suspended.
Stupid. They just killed their chances right there.
Yep, he's suspended for the rest of the year. So they go from the pass-happy offense to now a run-first offense with Treon Harris starting at quarterback. But the real storyline that's going to be of this matchup, it's not the Florida Gators offense. It's their defense.
Yeah.
Who, this year alone have given up 14.3 points a game, and they're 12th in the nation versus the run. They've given up less than 100 yards on the ground. But here's the kicker. They're not going up against any ordinary running back, not your average Joe who can run the ball. You're going up against one of the most elite backs in all of college football, the sophomore with 10 career 100-yard games. I'm talking about none other than Leonard Fournette.
Yep. Some say he is the best player in the entire country right now. If he weren't a sophomore, for example, if he was a junior like he will be next year or a senior, he'd probably be the first pick in the draft.
Guess what his worst game was last week on the ground?
Probably about 105, 110 yards.
158 yards. That's his worst game of the year. If that's his worst game, I shudder to think what his best game has been actually over 220 yards. He's had over 200. Before last week, he had 3 straight 200-yard games. And that's what really scares me about this guy, how explosive he is on the ground.
And Fournette has become not just such a dynamic player, but a really dynamic human interest story, too. Grew up in New Orleans, was actually homeless at one point because of Hurricane Katrina, and played in one of the top high school football programs in the country at St. Augustine. This is a young man who really could be destined for greatness right now. Keep in mind he's only a sophomore, so he's going to be really stating his case for the Heisman Trophy. If not this year, then maybe next year.
Oh, he definitely is one of the top contenders, along with Trevon Boykin from TCU. It's going to be one of them that wins the trophy. I know last week I made my definitive statement about Boykin, but you know what? Not taking into account that Boykin, he has so many players he can work with and so many targets. But LSU, honestly, their big offensive weapon is Fournette. He's the reason why they are 5-0. And as much as I would love to pick my Florida Gators to win, and I hope they sincerely do win, but they are going to Death Valley. They're going to a tough environment. They're going up against one of the toughest backs. I got to go with LSU to win this one. Sorry. And now finally, the battle for Paul Bunyan's trophy. The Big Ten Classic rivalry, Michigan State Spartans, led by Connor Cook, going up against Jake Rudock and the Michigan Wolverines in the Big House.
Now this rivalry really has been juiced up. One, because both teams are in a 4-way tie for the Eastern Division lead in the Big Ten. And two, Mr. Harbaugh has gotten his team to play so much better ever since losing the season opener to Utah. They have just been explosive offensively. It's the quarterback play that's really been paving the way for the Wolverines.
You know how many points the Wolverines have given up in the last 3 weeks?
None.
Exactly. First time since 1980 they have done that. No points they've given up in the last 3. They're number 1 in points per game, giving up just 6 on the season. Ever since you mentioned the opening week loss against Utah, 24-17, they've been pretty explosive. Jake Rudock is leading this offense. They got a good set of receivers, but it's their defense that really has been the key. Now they got to contend against Madri London and the other freshman, L.J. Scott, and Connor Cook, who came up with the game-winning touchdown against Rutgers.
Yeah.
They've been trailing a few games the last few weeks, the Michigan State Spartans. Who are you going to go with this week?
This is so tough to call because as impressive as Michigan's defense has been the last 3 weeks, none of their opponents have been Michigan State, and Michigan State can explode at any time offensively. Wow. I honestly, I really couldn't begin to tell you here. I really couldn't.
Well, I'm going with the Spartans to finally get some points on the board against this Wolverines team, and I'm also going with them to win the game at the Big House. I know that's a big task, but I think they're going to win their 3rd straight Paul Bunyan trophy. I'm going to go with the Spartans against the Wolverines. And there's some
That's going to do it for us.
Yeah, there's some good matchups too. Memphis and Mississippi in Ole Miss. There's some really good matchups. Jamie, awesome working with you as always.
Thank you again.
And we'll see you next week for another episode here on CTV. Good night.